The Alabama Farmers Federation and the Alabama Farmers Cooperative proudly present Simply Southern with your hosts Jim Allen and Mary Johnson.
Good morning and welcome to Simply Southern. I'm Jim Allen.
And I'm Mary Johnson. Thanks for joining us for the unique stories of life in the South. On today's show, we'll visit the Moundville Archaeological Park to learn more about Alabama's Native American Festival. We'll also stop by a North Alabama poultry farm to see how lower gas and propane prices are helping the industry. And at the end of our show, Sidney Phelps from Bonnie Plants will explain the difference between determinate and indeterminate varieties of tomatoes so that you can select the best option for your garden.
But to begin, let's travel to Tuscaloosa for a tour of Ivy Green, Helen Keller's birthplace.
There's no such thing as downtime when you own a farm. This is your land. You tend it and try to get the most from it, no matter the weather or time of day. It's been that way for generations. And for generations, your local quality co-op store has been there for you, with a full range of agriculture supplies and services, from feed to fertilizer, seed to grain storage, and the right hardware for any application. You'll always find what you need, plus friendly, knowledgeable advice at your local quality co-op store. There's one near you.
The blessing of Alabama agriculture is more than 3 meals a day. It means independence from foreign nations, freedom to pursue other jobs and activities, conservation of natural resources, and preservation of family values. For 93 years, the Alabama Farmers Federation has brought together the men and women whose work fills our plates and fuels the American dream.
Today's farming operation is more complex than ever before, with precision agriculture becoming an integral piece to farm management. AccuField provides precision agriculture technologies and site-specific management capabilities in a simplified and interactive format, helping you put all the pieces of the farming puzzle together. For more information, visit us at www.accufield.com.
Carl and Jan were camping with their family.
Hey, sweetie, do you mind if I get your wallet? I'm going to run down and get some hot dogs for dinner.
You know we're going to catch dinner, right?
Yes, I do. Okay.
Jan lost his wallet at the store. There was no ID in it, but the guy who found it found my business card and called me. I liked saving them money, but I loved helping them save their vacation. It was a good call.
For service and savings, call Alpha.
Tartar sauce, hon?
Yes! Yes! The story about Helen Keller is truly inspirational. One of Alabama's most famous residents ever, Keller's home in Tuscaloosa stands as a tribute to this phenomenal young girl who overcame incredible odds thanks to her strong will and the determination of her teacher, Ann Sullivan. Let's take a tour through her childhood home, known as Ivy Green.
The home was built in 1820 by Helen's grandfather, David Keller.
And she was born when?
In 1880.
Ivy Green was built only 1 year after Alabama joined the Union. It's a simple white home with typical Southern architecture. The difference is this house and estate was home to Helen Keller. Since then, it's become a shrine to the miracle that turned a blind and deaf 7-year-old girl's life around.
In the 1800s, David Keller had 640 acres. They grew cotton. We have 10 acres today that we have to maintain and keep up, and trust me, that's enough.
Sue knows the story of Helen Keller beginning to end.
Helen was a normal child until the age of 19 months, and then she had a very high fever that left her deaf and blind, and they said it could have been measles or scarlet fever.
Helen's father, Captain Arthur Keller, happened to be friends with Alexander Graham Bell, the inventor of the telephone. Bell gave her father some important advice.
He told Alexander Graham Bell about his daughter who was deaf and blind. And so Alexander Graham Bell said, well, you need to send her to Perkins School in Boston because there were no schools for the deaf-blind in the South. Even though we had the Alabama Institute for the Deaf-Blind in Talladega, you had to be deaf or blind. You could not have both disabilities.
As you can imagine, being deaf and blind makes the simplest things in life difficult. Helen would frequently get upset. That's when her teacher, Ann Sullivan, did some of her hardest work.
Helen decided that she was going to start showing out again. So Ann Sullivan didn't like it. So she took her from the dining room table out to the water pump, and she started spelling into her hand. She spelled the word water over and over because it was flowing. And all of a sudden, it was just like her mind opened up, and she learned 30 words that very afternoon.
Helen went on to attend Radcliffe College. She was the first deaf and blind person to attend college in the United States. Later, she became an international advocate for the disabled. She never returned to her birth home in Tuscaloosa, except for when the home was added to the National Register of Historic Places in 1954. But the home still stands for everything she worked so hard for, and it gets worldwide visitors to this day.
We average around 35,000 a year. All 50 states have been represented this year, and 33 foreign countries, because Helen Keller was not only a national, but she's an international.
The grounds still hold the original building, including the birthplace cottage, along with much of the original furniture from that time. And every year there's a performance of the story of her life.
Each summer we have the Miracle Worker play. We will be going into our 54th year for the play, and it's performed here on the grounds of Ivy Green.
The museum has also started something called Camp Courage, a Helen Keller experience. Each year they bring in children who have hearing or sight problems. For 3 days they take them fishing, teach them pottery, candle making, and other fun activities. Many leave with their lives changed, and Sue says that's exactly what Helen Keller stood for.
She once said, alone we can do so little, together we can do so much. And that is so true with all of us. You know, it doesn't matter where we work, who we represent, we have to be as one, and that's very important.
Keller died just before her 88th birthday. She, along with her teacher Ann Sullivan, are buried at the Washington Cathedral in Washington, D.C., but her legacy lives on. The home hosts the annual Helen Keller Festival in June, which is a great time to plan a visit. For more information, go to helenkellerbirthplace.org. Coming up later, learn how lower gas and propane prices are helping Alabama farmers. And Alabama has a rich Native American history, a history that's well preserved at the Moundville Archaeological Park. We'll have more on the park and its annual Native American Festival next on Simply Southern.
Alabama soybean farmers help fuel the state's economy. Soybeans are used to make clean, renewable biodiesel and are a key ingredient in feed for poultry, catfish, and livestock. Soybeans are used in dozens of products we use every day. But best of all, soybean farmers generate $258 million and more than 4,000 jobs for Alabama's economy, all while helping conserve our natural resources. Explore the power of soy.
We believe a plant should be more than a plant. This one is. It's all you need for your garden to succeed. Because it's a Bonnie plant. It represents hundreds of varieties of Bonnie's quality veggies and herbs. But more, it's from generations of Bonnie people who are passionate about sharing their love of gardening with you. Look for this little Bonnie plant and a whole family of plants like it in your garden center. Bonnie plants, so you'll know how to grow.
Alabama wheat and feed grain farmers grow food, fuel, and freedom. Their harvest helps feed Alabama's multi-million-dollar livestock, catfish, and poultry industries while reducing America's dependence on foreign countries for energy and food. By combining their strength with farmers of other commodities, feed grain growers are fueling the economic growth of Alabama communities.
It's been said, without hard work, nothing grows but weeds. This is certainly true in agriculture. At the Alabama Farmers Federation, we know success is not born of fancy words, grand ideas, or good intentions. It's a result of wise planning, bold leadership, dedicated work, and blessings from above.
Before the British, Spanish, or French arrived in Alabama, the state was home to numerous tribes of Native Americans. Thousands of Native Americans lived in and around Moundville, located along the Black Warrior River in Tuscaloosa and Hale counties. Now, each year, history comes alive at the Moundville Archaeological Park and the Native American Festival. Samantha Carpenter takes us to the historic site.
Every October in Moundville, the Native American Park looks similar to what it looked like hundreds of years ago. That's when Moundville Archaeological Park hosts its annual Native American Festival. The director says it has taken a small army to pull off the event each of the last 25 years.
It takes a huge core of great volunteers, and we have about 120 volunteers who come out here and help us put on this event over the 4 days.
To know why this event is so important, you have to know what Moundville is and why it's so significant that it was built in Alabama.
Moundville is located in west central Alabama on the Black Warrior River. We are about 20 miles south of the modern-day city of Tuscaloosa. But 800 to 1,000 years ago, this was the site of America's largest city north of Mexico. There were 3,000 Native Americans living here. They built 28 massive mounds that served as platforms for homes of the nobility, council houses, temples, that sort of thing, and then hundreds and hundreds of huts that the commoners lived in. But more than that, it was the capital of a region. This part of West Alabama had hundreds of villages up and down the Black Warrior River Valley. There were probably about 10,000 people under the control of the great Moundville chief.
Flash forward to 2015, and many of the mounds have been preserved. And that's why teachers like Anna Richardson bring their students each year.
I think it's important so that they can learn the history hands-on. We study Alabama history, and we start with the Indians, so I think it's important for them to see how they lived and the culture and learn as much as they can about it.
Bomar says the key to making the festival successful and educational is to have actual Native Americans participate in the 4-day event.
We have over 100 Native Americans here. Many of them are performers at our stage who do dance performances, psalm performances, storytelling, a great lineup. We also have artists here, and some of them we have hired to be here, and they are demonstrating their crafts like bow making, copperwork, pottery firing, pottery making, and that's entirely educational. They're here just to serve the public. And then we have other Native American artists here who are vendors, and they have produced beautiful works of art, jewelry, things like that, that they're selling to the public. So we keep those areas separate.
They also have hands-on learning and show and tell.
We also have what we call a living history encampment. And so we have about 8 Native Americans and others set up in campsites interpreting early Native American historical life, and they have camps set up where they're cooking, they're tanning deer skins, they're processing plant material, and teaching about traditional cultures.
Those Native Americans who come back each year say it's important to do so, to remember their ancestors and pass on what their culture is really about.
Because most of the kids, they're all the time looking at TVs and, Indians and cowboys. They think Native Americans are bad. It's not that. That's what we're here for, to educate them. That we're not like that. We're just here to be a peaceful people, to educate them in how we live, how our culture goes, and our heritage as we pass it on to our kids.
And the kids learn so much.
I love their shoes. It's so pretty. I like their clothes. It's amazing.
Bomar says his goal is simple. Make sure the lives, the food, the culture, the dead, and the mounds at Moundville live on in the next generation and beyond.
We want people to realize what a rich Native American heritage Alabama has. Here we have Moundville, one of the nation's most significant Native American cultural sites, sacred to thousands and thousands of Native Americans. And it's just such a perfect place to have like a homecoming, for them to come, for the Native Americans to come where their ancestors once lived, where there were once 3,000 people living in this powerful city 800 years ago, and for the public to celebrate their culture with them.
The Moundville Park and Museum are open daily 9 a.m. to dusk for tours. For Simply Southern, I'm Samantha Carpenter.
Along with the annual 4-day festival, the park offers summer day camps and themed tours. There's also a museum on site and a nature trail where visitors can walk or ride bikes. Find out more about the park at moundville.ua.edu. When we return on Simply Southern, we'll travel to a Limestone County poultry farm to find out why lower gas and propane prices are good for the family business. And Sidney Phelps from Bonnie Plants will explain the difference between determinate and indeterminate tomato plants.
Alabama wheat and feed grain farmers grow food, fuel, and freedom. Their harvest helps feed Alabama's multi-million-dollar livestock, catfish, and poultry industries while reducing America's dependence on foreign countries for energy and food. By combining their strength with farmers of other commodities, feed grain growers are fueling the economic growth of Alabama communities.
Today's farming operation is more complex than ever before, with precision agriculture becoming an integral piece to farm management. AccuField provides precision agriculture technologies and site-specific management capabilities in a simplified and interactive format, helping you put all the pieces of the farming puzzle together. For more information, visit us at www.accufield.com.
Support healthy food from local farmers by purchasing a Farming Feeds Alabama license plate. The tag funds education and promotion efforts, including Ag in the Classroom, agricultural scholarships, and youth programs. Get your Ag tag today.
Alabama soybean farmers help fuel the state's economy. Soybeans are used to make clean, renewable biodiesel and are a key ingredient in feed for poultry, catfish, and livestock. Soybeans are used in dozens of products we use every day. But best of all, soybean farmers generate $258 million and more than 4,000 jobs for Alabama's economy, all while helping conserve our natural resources. Explore the power of soy.
In the winter of 2014, a severe cold snap left many Alabama poultry farmers with big propane bills, partly due to supply and delivery issues. A year later, propane prices are much lower, which is good news for farmers. Kevin Worthington reports on these changes from Limestone County.
Like everyone else, farmers enjoy paying less for the necessities. But a primary necessity for poultry producers is gas. Not the kind that makes your car go, the kind that keeps you warm.
Well, we burn gas year-round, believe it or not. I mean, even in the summer months, in July, believe it or not, we have to have our heaters on to maintain the temperature, like I said, around that 90 degrees when we first get the babies in. We won't burn much. We may not burn about 100 gallons to the house, but we use propane year-round. But then in the winter months, when your conditions are cold outside and you've got to pull in so much cool air to keep the ventilation right for your chicken house, you've got to burn gas. And that's when basically there's 3 flocks in the winter months that we really burn them, 90% of our gas.
Ursary says baby chicks have to be kept at 90 degrees for the first 10 days of their life because they can't generate their own body heat. As a result, he typically burns 1,000 gallons of propane in each of his 9 houses during that time.
These heaters are just like the old mama hen years ago. They congregate underneath those heaters when they're babies, and we producing that heat to keep them warm, and that maximizes their performance. They've got to have that body heat. They're not using body heat to stay warm. They're utilizing all their feed that goes into meat production, and and we're paid on how we perform. And if we can keep that temperature at the optimum temperature for all the chickens, they'll produce and perform, the best.
Because of a winter storm, he and other poultry producers worried about just being able to get gas at this time last year.
Propane last year was a challenge. There was, of course, there was a shortage of it due to some transportation problems they had with the propane. And last year, our propane, it got scarce.
But not only was it scarce, Ursary says the cost was triple the regular price.
From last year to this year, we're paying $1.19 a gallon for propane, where last year we was paying, like that, $2.85. In norm, we'll pay generally on our 9 houses per year, our gas bill is usually around $30,000. Last year it was $38,000. It was about $8,000 more than what we had to pay in the extra price of propane last year.
During the peak of the shortage, Ursary says some farmers had to pay as much as $4 a gallon for propane. But just like gasoline, propane prices have dropped this year. And just like drivers, farmers are enjoying paying less. But to avoid another shortage, Ursary says many growers are switching to alternative means to keep their chickens warm.
There's a lot of growers that have changed to natural gas. It's piped in here and you just turn the valve on and it's always there. You don't have to worry about, a truck not getting here on time. like the propane trucks are. Sometimes they may be running late, or they have a shipment that just didn't get here because maybe icy roads or something like that. But you know, the natural gas, it's in the pipeline, it's piped straight in the farm, and the availability it's immediate.
Ursery says fuel for heat is one of the primary issues poultry farmers face. But electricity and water make up about 75% of the cost of doing business. He says those factors determine how successful a poultry operation can be. For Simply Southern, I'm Kevin Worthington.
According to a recent study, poultry production generates more than $15 billion in economic impact for Alabama, and the industry employs more than 86,000 people. Stay right here because Sidney Phelps with Bonnie Plants will join us next with information you'll want to know about choosing the best tomato variety for your garden.
This seems unbelievable, but I promise it's true.
What's with the buzzer? Oh, that's a raven. That's a good omen. He knows we're coming back with dinner.
Well, that bird had a bunch of friends. And when Scott got back to the camper...
Well, that was a bust! What? Scott! Wait, what did you do? It's raining inside.
His new camper was a total loss, but his Alpha policy covered it.
It's that bird.
For service and savings, call Alpha.
Making sure you're covered?
Good call.
What one thing can you say about your local quality co-op store? You can trust us. You get what you need for your farm, for your lawn and garden, and the safest products for your pets. We're locally owned and operated, and you can trust that we care about our community and the people in it. So if you're a raised bed gardener, a rose gardener, or if you farm hundreds of acres, the Quality Co-op Store has exactly what you need to get the job done. All this plus friendly, knowledgeable advice. Your Quality Co-op Store. There's one near you.
Support healthy food from local farmers by purchasing a Farming Feeds Alabama license plate. The tag funds education and promotion efforts, including Ag in the Classroom, agricultural scholarships, and youth programs. Get your Ag tag today.
We believe a plant should be more than a plant. This one is. It's all you need for your garden to succeed. Because it's a Bonnie plant. It represents hundreds of varieties of Bonnie's quality veggies and herbs. But more, it's from generations of Bonnie people who are passionate about sharing their love of gardening with you. Look for this little Bonnie plant and a whole family of plants like it in your garden center. Bonnie plants, so you'll know how to grow.
Hey folks, Sidney Phelps here with Bonnie Plants. Today we're going to talk about tomatoes. And as you can see behind me, we've got thousands on the ground here in the greenhouses. This is very important when it comes time for you to get ready to plant your garden. With tomatoes, you have so many things to think about to get the right one for you. Luckily for you, when you go to bonnieplants.com, we have a tomato chooser. That gives you all those things to think about, whether it's going to be for sandwiches, slicing, salsas, salads, you name it, you can narrow it down to the perfect variety for you and your family. Now, with tomatoes, you may not think this, but color has a lot to do with it. The lighter the color, the lower the acidity. The darker the color, the higher the acidity. Now, when we're choosing that, you want to make sure you find the right flavor that you're looking for. A couple of weeks ago, we talked about heirlooms, we talked about hybrids, and what made the best tomatoes in that as far as their disease resistancies and the letters and everything that you're looking for when you get to the store for the tag. But today we want to talk about space and what you can fit in your area. With that, we're going to get into a discussion about determinate and indeterminate tomatoes. So let's go take a look at some indeterminate tomatoes. We're going to see exactly what kind of traits they have so that you know what you're looking for when you go to the shelf. Now, Sweet 100 is probably one of the more popular indeterminate tomatoes that we carry. They're known for having large strands of cherry tomatoes going all over the place, hence the 100 in its name. With an indeterminate tomato, you've got to keep in mind, these are going to grow tall. They're going to be 6 foot, 7 foot, especially with the Sweet 100. Most common indeterminates are going to range anywhere from 5 to 6 foot on most occasions. The thing you have to keep in mind, you're going to have to cage these a couple of times at least, especially with a Sweet 100. Now, that being said, with an indeterminate tomato, it's going to bear the majority of its fruit throughout the spring and summer. So you keep harvesting, it's going to keep producing. Now, the thing about this is, when you're going to the store, you're going to see, as I just shake that a little bit, it's top heavy. It's a great plant, it's ready to go in the store right now, but when you're searching, this is what you're going to be looking for. You're going to need a lot of space for these little babies. They're going to grow, they're going to be all over the place. Unlike a determinate tomato, it's going to be a little bit stiffer and it's going to grow more compact. But with that, let's go take a look at our determinate tomatoes. With determinate tomatoes, you can notice they're already a little bit hardier. It's a stiffer body tomato. The reason for this is they're going to hold the majority of their fruit at one time. Now they'll still produce throughout the season, but with a determinate, this is what you're most common finding with produce farmers. They have to collect all of the tomatoes at one time to be able to harvest. So they go with a determinate style tomato. If you're doing any type of canning, preserves, sauces, or you're even making mass amounts of salsa, these are the tomatoes that you're going to want. You can get everything you need at one time and knock it out and be finished for the year. They'll still produce, like I said, but it's something that you need to keep in mind. Now, Container's Choice is a great 5-ounce tomato that we've had on our program for a couple of years now. They do great in the pots, raised beds, like I said, and as you can see, these are the same age as the Sweet 100, but they're not as easy to tip over. They're going to be about 3.5 to 4 foot tall in a small cage. They'll work up that way great, but if you don't have a lot of space, this is the way you need to go. And there's several determinate tomatoes to think about. We'll give you some ideas of how to look for them here in just a few. Well, I hope that was informative. Today we've taught you about indeterminate and determinate tomatoes. All you have to do is go check out that tomato chooser. You can find the right size and the right area just for you. So with that, we'll see you next week.
And thanks to Sidney Phelps for the great tomato tips. I know for Bonnie Plants, tomatoes are a big seller. Do you grow any in your garden, Jim?
I grow the indeterminate varieties to where I can have tomato sandwiches all season long.
Yes, those are a good summer treat, aren't they? If you'd like more tips on growing even better tomatoes in your garden, visit bonnieplants.com.
For more details on each of today's featured stories, be sure to visit the websites for each location. You can plan a visit to Ivy Green by visiting HelenKellerBirthplace.org.
And get information on upcoming events at the Moundville Archaeological Park online at moundville.ua.edu. Plus, bonnieplants.com has the information you need to grow delicious tomatoes and other fruits or vegetables in your garden.
Our Simply Southern Facebook page will also list the websites for today's featured stories. Be sure to like Simply Southern for that information and for updates on future episodes. And we want you to get revved up for next week's show. We'll take a drive to Alexander City for a peek at American automotive history at Welborn Muscle Car Museum.
And our education feature will focus on students at Harmony School in Logan, Alabama, who are working hard to keep their school grounds clean and beautiful as part of the Clean Campus program.
Thanks for watching this episode of Simply Southern. I'm Jim Allen.
And I'm Mary Johnson. We hope to see you again next Sunday.
Simply Southern is a production of the Alabama Farmers Cooperative and the Alabama Farmers Federation.